Paul, I am really pumped to chat with you tonight. Thanks so much for being on the show.
I am beyond pumped. Like beyond, like literally just like have been on the edge of my seat for like the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. No, we'll get into the beyond, the bed bath, the beyond, the sound bath, all of it. So Paul, I love to ask guests, first of all, where were you born and where did your life journey really begin?
So I was born in they call it the Queen City of the Sound, New Rochelle, New York, which is Lower Westchester. And kind of Westchester has its own little kind of circle, like cult of New York, like its
Yeah,
own little
that's
little
pretty cool. I actually
place.
didn't know that. So
Uh-huh.
one fun fact about my life with Westchester is I actually did a campaign stint in New Rochelle.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I worked on a special election back in 2018, and I was running point in the New Rochelle area. So our office was right across the street from New Rochelle City Hall.
Oh, and it's pretty wild. So I was down there for the holidays with my sons. I have two sons, and I pointed out to them and talk about like perspective. And 40 years later, the biggest, tallest building was the known as the K building,
Yeah.
right? And it's tiny relative to like Trump's building, and then the other two skyscrapers that are in the skyline of New Rochelle. So I thought that was just wild, when you revisit places that are still the same but not, and they've grown,
Yeah.
right?
So thinking back to your childhood, what was it really like for you to grow up in New Rochelle?
It was amazing. I think we were like the last of that get on your bike and ride for 10 miles away without cell phones, and your parents just kind of expecting you to come home like before the street lights went on. Like that was kind of before the street lights went on, be home for dinner. And you really didn't, you didn't have that worry. Like I have my phone on my lap, and it's like right, we're kind of attached to that. And historically, right, the phones were attached to the walls. Is the Matrix, one of my favorite movies, kind of highlights. You got to get to the phone, to the wall to get out, right? And so,
Great movie.
hmm.
So you talked about biking a lot as a kid and feeling like you were kind of from that generation. What other types of things did you like to do for kind of fitness and wellness related stuff when you were younger?
Well, it's kind of interesting as I'm a sociology professor, and so I kind of talk a little bit about sports. 'Cause sports are a huge part of people's lives, but I did not grow up athletic and sporty. So like when I was younger, I was like in the country. I was like the city slicker in the Catskills, like my family from downstate coming up to the country. And so I did that type of stuff growing up for like fitness. So it was like biking and hiking and um you know, going through the woods and making trails and forts in the trees and stuff. And then I got into like sports and athletics when I was a sophomore in high school and did like the high school sports thing. And so that was like a huge nosedive, jumping in headfirst into really intense athletics, and knowing now like how early people start. Like I didn't realize didn't realize that people were like semi-pro like in high school, and so I was like trying to play catch up
Yeah.
getting up to them,
So you talk about the Catskills. Was Dirty Dancing at all type of a documentary for you?
Not for me. Like, so that was like summer camp. So I didn't really do summer camp. Summer camp was with my family in the in and around their like tiny estate, you'll call it camp or whatever. And but there were places like that, so there was kind of like a reference point. But yeah, I didn't experience that, away from home, summer camp romance type thing. But
Well, that's a shame. But
yeah.
more serious question though, like what were some of your favorite sports when you were younger?
So I dove into football and American football, not the international football, and I was really small. I was like 30 pounds smaller than I am now, and did my best, and pushed the envelope there. But I was a wrestling was like my main sport, became my main focus sport, and I did a season of lacrosse, which I liked the game, but I just ended up focusing on football and wrestling, grappling, and I continued with grappling until I was about 25, and then that was over.
It's a really random coincidence we have. So I also played one season of lacrosse in high school. I actually talked about that on a previous episode.
Interesting.
Yeah, freshman
Yeah.
year of high school, and then my high school switched it up, so you had to either pick doing the theater stuff or sports because they changed up the timing of the practice and everything. So I picked theater. But so you're in high school. What did you do after high school?
So went literally like went away to college, SUNY Albany, and just kind of stayed. I went home just on holidays and I think one or yeah, two summer vacations, and then I kind of like just basically transplanted literally from New Rochelle to Albany, New York, and I've been here now more than half of my life, and I really love this area. I've really kind of grown, not just grown roots, but really grown an affinity to this locale and what the Capital District has to offer.
So talk to me about the collegiate poly vibe.
Oh, well, as a college professor, I do share a lot of that. Like, so one of the stories I share is like college is a time to, if you wish, like, I mean, any moment, like right now moving forward, you can reinvent yourself, right? And so that was kind of a reinvention of myself or becoming a more authentic self with speckled with the hip hop Hollywood vibe, right? Like what are the expectations for young men in 1993, right? Well, for us for me it was like that, that hip hop nation and Wu-Tang was at the top of the charts. I just was listening to, as I said, like Tiny Desk, Wu-Tang, GZA, and so that's kind of what were my kind of icons. So I went to college literally with two turntables and a microphone and was rocking out my suites and then did like frat life. So Delta Upsilon Fraternity International. So I was like a frat boy and just had a lot of fun. And what was nice about the experience was it just wasn't like Animal House partying. It was like the majority of everyone in my fraternity was academically minded too. So that was kind of a foray into like balance. I think that's life, right? So I learned a lot, on both sides, just about myself and about balance and about, the importance of focusing on your academics, but also focusing on some leisure, and
Yeah.
and I do express that to my students. You have to find that, you figure out what works for you. So
Yeah.
that was it. Yeah, it was like DJing, um, academics, and that was an interesting journey. And then yeah, and then figuring out like starting to figure out who I was.
What appealed to you about being a DJ, about rap?
I think just being born when I was born, right? Like, so it was like the Beastie Boys were like my fifth and sixth grade vibe. They were Licensed to Ill was at the top of the charts. So it was like they were my big brothers. They were like who I wanted to be, and ultimately that did come to fruition. And so at first it was emulating. I think that's what we all do. We kind of emulate our icons in a sense, and then some people do. Some people build their own stuff around it. And so like I ended up building around that college experience and the college vibe, like my own little persona, so through a nickname that was given to me, which was Paulie Bots. And then another person was like, well, Paul sounds like Paul A, and so it became Parlay. And so those were kind of my two like alter ego rap names. And I started writing music around that. And I just was texting someone that we wrote some songs that we actually went into a professional recording studio way back with reel to reels and just getting in there and recording an EP and trying it. But it was before all this modern YouTube, MySpace. It was Yeah, there was none of that back then. So it was just a cool thing to do.
Yeah, that was a fun moment where I learned about the parlay piece when you were asking where you could get like a parlay Saturday hoodie. And shout out to Matt Phelps and Casey Miller and the Birdie to the Bogey show. Uh, but what was that like for you when you really started performing as a college student?
It was amazing. I think it just it happened organically. So I was like, DJing in my suite room, rapping in my suite room. It would attract people in. So I met people around that were enticed by, collaboration. And I have some cassette tapes like somewhere in my basement that were like some of those of recordings, which are kind of cool to reflect on every once in a while. And then again with this one guy, shout out to the DR, who's in Westchester now. We wrote we in our spare time. Like, what do you do in your spare time? Well, we were studying, and then we were writing music, and so we wrote music, and I had friends who were in bands at the time, and so we would go to their studio time and then ask them if they would do some music for us, and so they recorded the instrumentals, and then we recorded the vocals, and we made cassettes, and we shared them with our people, and we participated in a couple of open mics around the Capital District, and so there's I think his son is on the radio. I don't listen to the radio much anymore, but the guy was Sugar Bear at the time, and I think his kid is Sugar Bear too, out there, and so I remember we were up on stage doing one of our original songs, and he came up to me after. He was like, "Yo," he was like, you're really good." He's like, "When I walked in, I thought it was like a 6 foot black guy up there, and it was like that was like affirmation, like wow, like he gave me kind of the nod of like you kind of did a good job up there." So I
Y-
kind of kept that in my pocket as I moved forward, and I think for anybody out there too, I think you have to push through like the self doubt, and I think that's been a part of. I think it's a part of everyone's life, but especially a part of like you know like trying to be like Eminem, like a white rapper and stuff. And so I ended up just doing it for me after, because it was something that like an art form that I grew up with, that I find a deep affinity and appreciation of, and again, it's an angle or facet of who I am.
Yeah, that's cool that you talk about it that way. I'll tell you a funny story that I don't think I've shared with you. So I used to work at the New York State Senate, and karaoke is a big culture in Albany, like post session. And I had just met one of our newer senators at the time, Jamal Bailey. Shout out to Jamal Bailey, who is the chairman of the Bronx Democratic Party and a good friend now. But we didn't really know each other at the time. And one of my go-to karaoke songs has always been "This Is How We Do It," little Montel Jordan,
Nice.
more like '90s R&B. So I sing it, and he tells me this story. He loves to tell this story, and he's judging me based on like oh, this guy's gonna sing this song, and I do a great job with it, and he gives me props afterwards. And for a while before he really knew my name well, he would just call me Montel around the
Nice,
Capitol.
right.
So that was fun. But I bring that story up because I think it's cool you talk about it that way. Because ultimately, you pursued an art form that you wanted to do, and sometimes that isn't necessarily gonna meet people's expectations at first. So as you started to get some credibility doing that, how did that make you feel?
Yeah, again, it was it's like I'm always kind of humbled by things like that, so I always kind of take it, and in my head, I downplay it all the time, but I do, like I love going to open mics, and a big shout out to Wicked up in Clifton Park, Trick Shot, billiards, and that's where I kind of got my next. It was like the next phase. I kind of put it on a shelf, so I'm a PhD sociologist, so it was like grad school, put all that stuff away and tucked away, but didn't. I think a lot of people tuck things away and they leave it and they lock it up and they say, "I'm never," like that's past life type stuff. And so for me, it was always there, but it just wasn't the time. And then the timing around 2010 to 2012, I found the open mic, and I was like, "Oh, I can I can go up there and do like live karaoke, so with the band, with the full band, and there's just something about the energy of a band behind you.
It's so fun.
It's amazing
I
and
had
it's
never done
powerful.
I had never done live karaoke before in the world, and I ended up, of all things, I think it was either like a Hinge or a Bumble date, like out in gosh, Springfield, Massachusetts, and it was like I think Theodore's Blues and Barbecue. Bar. If
Nice.
you've ever heard of that spot in
No.
Springfield, Mass.
Hmm.
That was the first time I'd ever done karaoke with a live band. It was so fun.
Did you do Montel Jordan?
I did because I knew I could crush it. I wanted to impress my date, so
Right.
I knew I could. Got to at least start with a strong staple.
You had to go with your go-to, and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
yeah, so that's what I started doing, and I connected with a bunch of local artists, like people in some the biggest bands around the Capital District that
yeah.
were fill-ins, and I jammed with some bigger folks who were just like popping in, and so then I was like, oh, like let me bring back some of those songs that I wrote with my buddy. And so I talked with him. I was like, can I do these songs? And he's like, yeah, of course. Like, use them. And then so started doing covers repeatedly, and then started doing some of my songs at the open mic. And once we had a routine, then I peeped with John Chiara, who has a recording studio. No offense, JGI, shout out too, but studio downtown Albany, and we went there and we recorded my first newer EP, and that was just an amazing thing to have. And but I recorded and I just sat on it, like it literally sat on my shelf in my bedroom for 5, 8 years or whatever it was. And it wasn't until about 3 years ago that I released it onto Spotify. Like I found an online label, and then it's on Spotify and Apple Music, and that was kind of like I felt really good. I felt like part of me could exhale because it was done. Like I was like, oh, I am a recording artist,
Yeah.
right? Like so like if you really want something, and we spent a lot of time all like for years like saying this now, right? If you want something, you set your mind to it, you can do it, and it's true.
I got to ask you. So I approach fitness and wellness from a very creative standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint, but to help other people who may not think of themselves as creative types, but more so are like fitness wellness people. Can you explain at all the process that goes through your head when you have an idea? I don't care what it is, a song, a poem, anything, just to put the language on what it is for you to be creative.
Hmm. It's a great question. I think for me everything starts as like, well, I mean, depends on how it starts. Maybe it starts as a vision. Maybe it starts as a desire, a point of focus, or like like writing something. It might be a feeling, and so like I'm all about like just getting down and like writing that down and then working on it. And then maybe it doesn't, and sometimes it doesn't happen right away. Sometimes that line sits there and it's gotta grow some roots. But it's like I said, like my music was always there. It was always right here, or right here in my Rolodex, my mental Rolodex. And some of the people listening have no idea what a Rolodex is, so Google it. But it's just like right there, and then ultimately it made its way back around, or people call it the back burner, right? So I think as someone who, and for me, like as someone who's kind of like just needs to constantly get check things off my list. Like that'll be like, okay, put that on paper. That'll get done eventually when I get around to it. And I think you practice yoga. I think yoga changed my life in the way where you really have to be okay with where you are. There's no skipping steps. Like you are in that posture, that asana, as long as it takes you to get to the peak expression, if you ever get there, you
I think,
know?
yeah, I think of it constantly as the physical discipline of the practice of being present,
I,
or in a,
no
or
doubt,
or in a way, it's just the art of being present.
no doubt. I mean, that's one of the essence of the practice is right. And I just got from teaching a class, shout out to the hot yoga spot, right? And um, my fam, and that's what I cue a lot is continue to be present, continue to be right here. And that's the antithesis of what we do in our culture, because we're always like focused forward, focus forward. Where am I going? Where do I have to go? What do I have to do? multitasking, and yoga, you can't, right? So you could bring Japanese Zen into it, which is something that I refer to. Like Zen is the art of doing one thing at a time. And I think we lost that. I think we lost that in a lot of things, right? Like I think we lost that, especially, which is really sad, in relationships. Like I've heard people, like, they just can't sit with their partner. Like, and I think that's one of the most intimate things you could do, is just sit and be without anything else and be zen in that moment. And so yoga, I think, teaches you to be there. Right, but there's so many other angles of yoga. Like the point I was getting at before was we look at, like, a lot of people think yoga. This funny story, like, I was staying at an Airbnb in Florida a couple of years ago, and um, the woman was like, "Oh, you're a yoga teacher." The person that owned the house, "You're a yoga teacher. Teach me how to do handstands." And I think that was like, just that's one of the things, like, people think yoga's handstands. And I think for me, when I got back into post COVID stuff, getting back in the studio after things were shut down, that was like my goal, was handstands. And so it made me reflect on that. And I was like, yeah, that's what I thought too. Like, that was like, I got to do handstands. I got to do this. I got to do arm balances. And yeah, though, I mean, those are fun and those are good goals. But it's really what you said, right? It's really about being present, and being one with the moment, and getting everything into balance.
I've had to learn the love the process of just the practice. I remember in college, I had two very different style theater directors, and if I had to kind of funnel it down to who they were as people, I would say one really emphasized the product and one really emphasized the process.
Mm.
And both are important, but I've come to love the process because it allows you to let go of having a predetermined outcome of what something has to be. And that's a beautiful thing about yoga.
It is, and I think one of my epiphanies over the last couple of years, and I kind of said it in a couple of classes, like, be in the moment, and stop pushing, because when did life ever play out the way you expected it to? Right? And so why worry about what's coming when you have no idea? Right? And so being in the moment, being embracing where you are, embracing all the options, like slowing down just a little bit. And I found that as I've slowed down my rush and my push and my bustle, like, I've had some amazing experiences because of that.
Yeah, it's incredible with all the spiritual division and all the geopolitical issues that come from that. There's incredible spiritual unity that is hardly ever talked about being present and being in the moment, whether it's the Bible, whether it's the Torah, the Quran, like there's all sorts of, and you could go even beyond monotheistic religions. There's just so much spiritual teaching about the practice of being present.
I think in being, just being open to having a conversation, and literally something I said in class tonight too was, um, thinking about how much of your perspective colludes what you see, right? Like, so, like, we're both sitting here looking in a particular direction, and our perspectives are accurate based on where we're sitting, right? And you could think about that in terms of your interpretation of something that happens, right? Something that happens in your life, and an interaction with someone else. And so they could have a perspective and you have a perspective, and you're both right.
Well, there's the funny scene in the Art of the Deal movie where Sebastian Stan is playing Trump and he has the monologue where he just starts off, "What is truth? What is truth?" And people can talk about it, but really, what is truth? Because in reality, all of us have our own individual experiences,
Hmm.
and there are, in theory, such a thing as facts, but yet how we perceive them, how we interact with them, what they actually mean to us is completely different.
So I love chatting with you, because this is, again, like, one of my epiphanies this year. Like, something went down with someone, like, in like second, third degree of separation. and big public splash. And I said, well, there's three truths. There's my truth, there's your truth, and then there's the truth. And I said, you'll eventually get that last one when it comes around, and so you have to embrace that, if something happens out there in the world, like, you really don't know the truth until you do.
Yeah, I think for me also, I talk about yoga as the spiritual arena for me in my ongoing journey, but I think of it often as a community arena. It's not just an individual experience within that yoga studio or a fitness studio. Even if you're not talking to other people, there is an energy just by being in that room with other people. You can feel that everybody and anybody is going through something in that room. You're all sharing in that experience together.
So many different threads on that, right? In yoga it's called the sangha, right? Like your family. But there's this larger yoga community. It's connected me to people around the world, and connecting on yoga, just even like a reel, and or those yogi see yogi do's connect, with like people from around the world, and connecting people, and you know even locally. Like, I introduced one of my buddies to yoga, and I remember when he came up to me, and he had never practiced yoga, thought, like a lot of people do, like, oh, I'm not flexible, I can't practice. I was like, just give it a try. See what you see what you think. And then it was a weekend, and then 2 weeks in, and then it was 100 classes in. And I remember him coming up to me, he was like, bro, I just did 100 classes. I just clicked my hand, I was like, you're glad you did, right? And so for me, it was always like, yeah, I was like, glad that I did. I wish I had started sooner. And the that community feeling is yeah, there's nothing like that. And I don't want to miss the other point, is that everyone has stuff going on. Everyone, like when I say, I typically will shout out to, like, Louise Hay, who's a great self-help person. Um, when I say, like, Louise Hay, like, saved my life, like, yoga saved my life too. It was at the same time I started practicing yoga, and found her teachings and books, and Wayne Dyer at the same time too, similar type of vein, spiritual, self-reflection, and you know, teaching yoga over the past couple years, when stuff has been going down in, like, my own life, and it doesn't stop. Like, I try to tell my sons, like, don't think that this gets any easier. We're always on that wheel of life, and, or as the Buddhists will say, like, the wheel of suffering. Like, life is suffering, and we have to get up every day and continue to do stuff through it, right? And so, like you said, like, everybody in that room has something in their life that is either going on right now, or has went on, or historically went on, that they haven't, or they're maybe going to start to deal with. And so, like, I know for me it was like having those classes to teach, regardless of how my day was. If I was having a bad day, getting up, getting out, going to that class, and being able to, like, put that to the side and be there for all those people that had stuff going on, that got there, that I had to be there for. Right. So it's like this simultaneous, symbiotic way of healing each other.
There's an expression, and help me out if you can. It's something with this temporary discomfort that you like to use sometimes in some of your classes.
Yeah, I use it, and I kind of ripped it from Tim, who teaches Bikram yoga too, and so, yeah, there's always this. Oh, now I'm flaking on it too.
You can make one up
There's
too
a
on the spot.
there's always discomfort. Like
Yeah.
people ask, like, do you like yoga? And I'm like, no, I really really don't like it. I love it. I love it. Like, I couldn't imagine my life without it. But there is always this. It's not easy. It's not easy coming to the mat.
Yeah.
It's not easy being there, and being on the mat sometimes. But you're so much better off when you do.
I think of the way you frame it more so as the idea that temporary pain or temporary discomfort is ultimately part of the growth process in
Right.
your practice. And you have talked so big picture about yoga, as have I, but I know you teach a lot of different types of yoga within the hot yoga spot community, including Bikram, Yin, restorative, the sound healing, and I want to touch on all of it. But can you talk a little bit more, I guess, starting with Bikram, like how has Bikram been a part of your yoga journey specifically?
Well, I guess the first thing is just to clear the air on Bikram Chaudhry.
Yeah, that'd be good to talk about.
Yeah, I think the clear thing is again that whole truth thing. Like there's multiple truths, and the yoga stands on its own. Like the sequence is, 26 postures, two breathing exercises, that 26-2, and that stands on its own, regardless of who brought it to the West, which he did, and he studied with those folks. But it's thousands of years prior to him. The origins of like hatha yoga, like are put together in that, and um, so we'll just move kind of all that other stuff to the side. Like I still call it Bikram yoga because it is. And
You make it
um
your own. You weave a lot of of who you are into that. I mean, I've done some classes with you, and you're dropping in rap lyrics, and finding ways to weave
right.
in like Ludacris or 50 Cent. Like you find a
A-
way to make it your own.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of it. Like there is his lines in script, and then there's like my lines in script, but it's all the same postures, right? And then you can go to like multiple people leading the practice, and you're going to get a little bit of a different vibe. So yeah, so you'll get me like, and so I think, again, going back to like 1993 when I went away to college, it was like that that persona who I created was me, but it was not completely authentically me, right? It was like this character that I created, but then that character kind of stayed, part of it stayed, right?
Yeah.
And then the other parts of me have come full circle, right? And have been parts. So like again, hip hop is a part, music is a huge part of my life. So I bring that in. Like even I'm like, okay, we're gonna play it again like Luke Bryant, right?
Yeah.
And so just like throw in something that will make one person in the class like laugh, or maybe everyone sometimes when I make a pun in class or a reference, and yeah, making it my own, and but still sticking to the core essence of that. One of the lines is like push, push, push. Like, yeah, like that's you. It's you versus you. When you get on that mat, and especially in that type of yoga, you're pushing for 90 minutes. It's very different than other styles of yoga, which are all beneficial and all necessary. But again, that's that extreme, high end yang practice where you're 105 plus degrees, humid in the room, and you're going for 90 minutes, and it pushes you to the edge of like who you are.
I grew up Episcopalian, so I joked with Tommy Birch on a prior episode that for me, it's like liturgical yoga. It's very
Mm.
familiar. You have the same poses, and I think for some people, there's the scientific ability to at least attempt to measure like your level of flexibility. A few months in, because you have that kind of consistency of the poses. But I feel like one of your loves, maybe it's not your favorite form of yoga, but I wanted to ask you about yin, because I feel like you're a great ambassador for yin yoga, which gets a bad rap sometimes. I feel like within the art forms within the yoga world.
Yeah, I mean, I do like I love. There's a place, and I love it all, and so like for me, it's like the Bikram yoga is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum as the Yin yoga, but it's just as challenging, but it's internally challenging. So that's the class that I came from this evening, and you're holding postures for 3 to 5 minutes. And so, whereas in your typical like Vinyasa flow class, it might be one breath, one movement, and then maybe you're in down dog for 3 to 5 breaths or something, or forward fold for 3 to 5 breaths, right? And in Yin, you're gonna hold that forward fold for 3 to 5 minutes, and it's very challenging. It's you're there, you're in this stillness, but you're not in stillness, you're moving externally, and you're like literally having like you're the mirror, as I like to say, like that brings you into yourself.
So, what are some of the practical benefits of actually doing it?
It gets you deeper into your joints, into that fascial tissue matrix, right? Where um, there's a lot of stuff there. Like one of the things I said in class today is your body keeps score and record of everything you've done your entire life, whether it's feelings, emotions, or sports injuries, right? And so that particular practice, yoga in general, but that particular practice will bring you into really figuring out and finding out what's going on in the joints in your body because you're deep. You might really get into like both of your hips during Vinyasa flow class, or you're more prone to maybe injure yourself if you're not properly warmed up in those types of classes. Where in a yin class, you're holding those postures for that significant amount of time. It allows you to really get into it. Like so, my doctors and osteopaths who were talking about trigger points. I was having some issues in my shoulder and like my thoracic outlet. I had like thoracic outlet syndrome, and he was like, takes takes like 90 plus seconds to release a trigger point, like when someone's massaging you or something, right? And so the yin, like you're not breaking the surface for about 2 minutes, right? And so after that 2 minutes, then your body's going to start to release, going to start to let go, and then you're going to start to again. The more you practice, I mean, if you're early on, you're just like you're kind of in your head, right? That whole part, and then so the more you practice, the more you realize, well, this is the pain and discomfort that I'm in for. Now I know it. Now I can start to look into, well, what's releasing in my body right now? Where am I holding on? What do I have to? How do I have to orient my body? And we're constantly cueing like shoulders back away from the ears. Why? Like because we're always punching, we're driving, or whatever we're doing a lot. We have to kind of get out of those maybe bad habits that we've developed.
Do you view it at all like, kind of similarly to just doing mobility work, or do you view it more differently or more holistically than that?
Oh my gosh, I mean, so yeah, I mean, you're getting benefits that are beyond just the physical, but to bring like a Zen saying in or from the Tao Te Ching, like Lao Tzu, right? The tree that doesn't bend breaks, or the branch that doesn't bend breaks, right? So yoga, or especially yin too, like building that joint flexibility, like so you don't physically break, but also I think it builds up, like yoga helps you build up this mental strength and toughness so you don't break out there in the world too, right? So if you're breathing through this discomfort in class, like that's why I call it yoga practice, right? Number one, there's no yoga perfect, right? But the yoga practice is in the room. We're practicing in the room for the real world where the real yoga happens, right? So we run into discomfort in the real world. We we breathe through it. And we shouldn't have a shift in like whether we're having a good day or a bad day based on that interaction if we're mindful about right where we are.
Right. I've talked about this on past episodes, is building the mental capacity to respond rather than react to what life throws at you.
Yeah, keeping your keeping your response like yours and not allowing someone to change it. Like the common thing is like, you made me upset, you made me angry. No, you made you.
Yeah.
Wayne Dyer has this saying like, if you squeeze an orange, you get orange juice. So what happens when you get squeezed? You're gonna get orange juice. What's your orange juice, right? And so, like, if someone's squeezing, your life is squeezing, and you would get angry, well, that's at your core, right? If you're running or you're cowering or like you're more fight, flight, or you're more flight, right? Like that's your response. Well, you have to realize what that is.
So
You
let me ask you about breath, and more specifically about the
know?
sounds of breath and how you got into sound baths and sound healing specifically, because I feel like you are so synonymous now within the hot yoga spa community for this art form. How did you get into it?
Oh man, life and serendipity, right? Was it supposed to happen, or did it just happen that way? So, I was actually at a retreat, and this was 20 January 2023, and so I just went do some self-care, and I attended a sound bath. I'd never been to one before, Tibetan singing bowls, and it was actually Elise Manza, who is in the Capital District, really awesome offerings here, and had no idea what to expect, and lay down and soaking this stuff in. And I was like in and out of consciousness during it. Like, sometimes we are during yoga in our shavasana, right? But it was like got out of there and I was like, whoa, I need to learn about that. And so, like, as a researcher, I went online. I was like, started learning about it, and um, like literally went around the world, because we can, like, with our smartphones, go around the world and find all the information is there. And so I started reading. I was like, I need to get some bowls. I need to get like start doing this, and um, had kind of it's a really long story, but short, kind of happened upon a guy in Nepal, where like he was like a middleman through like getting these bowls direct from a factory. They still make them in the old fashion, and bought my first set of bowls, and happened upon coincidence, divine synchrony with the person that trained me in vibrational Reiki
Yeah,
and healing.
and you have some with you. Can you talk about kind of what these things
Yeah,
are
so
and just maybe show them so that we can catch them on camera?
yeah, so I brought a tuning fork, and so it was kind of an interesting, again, like, interesting how I happened upon the tuning forks. Was I was shopping for them. I knew that I wanted them for whatever reason. I always thought they were kind of cool, but people use them, and so I went on Facebook Marketplace and was shopping, and I found this woman who was closing a shop in Florida, and connected with her and bought a set from her. And then I was like, she's like, well, if you need anything else, look at my website. I'm looking at her website. I was like, wait, you do trainings? And I was like, wait, I might as well train with you. And so I signed up with her, and to come to find out, her name is Francine Milford, or was she passed on almost 2 years ago. And so I was like one of her last students, which is kind of wild. And she wrote these manuals. She's known and synonymous with vibrational Reiki, and so using the vibrations. And she was a big fan of the tuning fork. She did not like the Tibetan singing bowls and
Can
gongs.
you outline what vibrational Reiki really is for like the layperson?
Right. So anyway, so yeah, so these tuning forks, they're tuned to a particular frequency. This is the 528 frequency. This is if you look it up, 528 hertz is known as the love frequency. There's also 432, another love frequency. And there's lots of research on these two particular frequencies that you could find. And so I'll just kind of play it. So I don't know if might be able to hear that. And so what you do, like, as a Reiki practitioner, is you play it over the person's body, right? In their kind of aura, in a sense. And for me, like, I can hear it, and it makes a little bit of a different sound as I move over like someone's body, and I will play it and move the energy around, and it's kind of like tuning a guitar.
Yeah, so let me give my side of it. So I've attended multiple sound baths you've led, and if you go to one at the hot yoga spot and you do them at a lot of the different locations, you'll be able to have like pillows, bolsters, blankets, and kind of tuck yourself in nicely. And you just try to let yourself relax and meditate. So as you're walking around and doing that, what's your intent as you're going around doing that?
Well, my intent is just to like I actually do kind of my own little meditation, and kind of my meditation before giving a session is to just bring be able to be the vessel at which anybody gets whatever they need during this. So if they need peace and serenity or love or balance, or they have some sort of ailment that they need release from, and if I can do it and if I could be the vessel for it, that's what I want to be in that moment. So I literally meditate and pray on that. That's what I do.
So
And
how would you
so
talk about kind of the science behind it? So you talk about the frequencies in terms of the love frequency, but as you're doing that and the theory of the sound behind it, like again, how would you kind of convey that from the yoga perspective, the average layperson who might think some of this stuff is just like oga boga?
well, I mean there's many kind of like yoga, like there's many different angles to how it can benefit. And so like I have like all of these like scientific bullet points, and there hasn't been extensive research done, but what research has been done, it's like will generally reduce tension from the body, right? And so if you think about just general disease or disease and uneasiness or anxiety and some of the things that we experience on a daily basis, just attending a sound bath is going to bring you to a level of kind of peace and serenity that you're going to have after that you wouldn't have had if you didn't go. And on top of it, there are also these kind of again these scientific proofs that have shown that there are these other benefits, and some of the things again, like you can call them ooga booga, you can call them miracles, right? Like there's an Einstein quote that didn't make it into my most recent book because I would have had to pay to have it in the book, and I couldn't afford it. But it was like Einstein was heard to have said that you can believe nothing is a miracle, you could believe everything's a miracle, right? And so sometimes there is the unexplainable things that can happen through whatever it is, right? Like how do people that take a sugar pill, their cancer goes away, and the people that took the drug, and or someone attends a sound bath or gets one of these has one of these experiences and then is relieved of something that they've been holding on to for a long time. And you know I can't tell I can't tell. I was thinking about how to explain this, but I can't tell exactly what I'm doing. I know what sounds good and I know what doesn't. Like that's the DJ, right? I'm going to play a song that sounds good and I'm going to follow with the vibe. And so it's kind of a similar thing when I'm playing in that room. I just follow the vibe. I'm just mixing the music. And then I'm walking around and then I'm mixing everyone's individual music, right? And so trying to bring harmony and balance into back into their lives that, you know.
So when you say kind of reading the room and just playing the music, is some of that for you just trying to look at people's body language and get a sense of what types of tension they might be holding on to?
For me, it's really in my ear. It's really in playing it. So I brought one of my Tibetan singing bowls too. And again, it's not from Tibet. It's from Kathmandu, Nepal. Shout out to Loken out there who curated this. This bowl is like, I don't know, 50, 80, maybe 100 years old. Who knows? But this is a vintage one. And this is associated with I forget which note this is. This is the solar plexus, and um, so when you play it, it makes a particular sound. But when you play it over someone, it sounds a little bit different. So I know what it sounds like now, and then when I'm playing it, like I did after my yin class night, 'cause I give them a little treat. I give them their own little mini sound bath in their shavasana, and I move it around. And I'm like, oh. And I don't know what they're experiencing. Maybe they have a headache. Maybe they had a bad experience. Maybe they had a rough day at work. Whatever it is, I'm going to play it and move it around until it sounds right, you know? And just like that guitarist that doesn't have to look at their tuner, can just turn the knobs on the neck of the guitar and say, okay, that's the way that string is supposed to sound. That's the way that bowl is supposed to sound. And so I keep kind of fiddling with it and playing with it until it sounds right. And then at the end of the experience, and people are like, "Is everybody okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, how do you feel?" "I feel good." And that's what it's all about. So what am I doing? I don't know. I was trained. I went through the training. I the Reiki again. It's you could say it's foo foo su su whatever words you want to use. Whatever it is, it's moving energy. And so there's lots of different, I studied Tai Chi and Qigong historically prior to my yoga practice. And so Qi or Qi is energy. And so in Qigong, you're moving internal energy. And so with your breath. And it's kind of what you're doing in yoga too, right? So it's all related, all these practices, and Tai Chi are movements, slow movements, kind of like yoga, and you're moving this energy around, this ball of energy, and it's just like that yoga flow, but it's different, and so there's all these parallels that happen, and there's no distinct, well, there's no distinct like I can cure that, and I don't call it medicine. I call it, like, again, like, it's a necessary thing. It's a necessary thing. I think, so for me, I go to periodic sound baths. I practice yoga, um, and it's all beneficial, to holistic life.
Yeah, so you think about your life now, like how does yoga as a whole, like all these different, I guess, disciplines within yoga, like how do they help you? How do they inform your current kind of fitness journey now?
I really think that for me, like like I say it a lot, like I couldn't imagine my life without yoga. I don't know where I'd be, and I don't like really like to consider it because I love where I am. Like, I love where it's brought me. I love the experiences it's brought me to. I love that it has, again, made me able to better deal with life as it comes at me. And every day is a struggle, like, and again, like, there's no like spiritual bypassing, emotional bypassing. Like, that's not what yoga is about. Like, yoga is about, like, coming to your mat and processing whatever you're dealing with. It's not a way to tuck it away. I mean, I guess you could, right? And it really depends on your intent. But for me, it's like when I go to my mat and if I'm having a rough day, I'm going to process that rough day on my mat and then leave it there because I let it out, because I did process it through my practice, right? Or if I'm having a great day, it's going to make my day even better. It's going
Yeah.
to make me even brighter.
I've had a few people ask me if I've ever cried during yoga, and I have. I've had kind of some amazing emotional experiences. Have you had any profound experiences for yourself, just whether they be emotional, spiritual, just things that really caught you off guard?
So it's a great, yeah, great story around that. So I was practicing in the studio. This was like right before I was a teacher, before I started doing like YTT training. But I'd been practicing yoga for at least 5 years or so at that time, and so I'll always touch base with people if I see they're like a little bit uncertain, and so I was like, how, in the locker room with the guy, I was like, how are you doing? He's like, really angry. I was like, that's okay. It's good actually, because you'd rather have it come out now than have it come out like when you're hanging out with your girlfriend later, right? And so it's like, well, figure out, well, where that anger is coming from, and it's good that you brought it to the surface. And again, when you first start practicing, you don't know. And so someone had asked me a question like, "How was your practice?" And so my answer that day was, it was it was an every emotion practice. So I went through everything. I went through like the 5 stages of grief during that practice. And so, like, have I cried on my mat? Lots. and I'm not I'm not too masculine to admit it. Like I'm very comfortable in my masculinity. Big shout out to SUNY Albany. I'm the first male recipient of a master's degree in women's studies, and so like being in tune with like who I am and being a human being, general sans like your gender, like everybody cries and everybody needs to. And so if your yoga practice brings you to weep, then that's what you need in that moment. Or if it brings you to be angry, well, trying to figure out like what's angry about that. But literally that one day, and it's happened sometimes where it's like I went on my mat and I was angry, I was upset, and then I was starting to bargain right with it,
Yeah.
you know, and then just really going through like literally the 5 stages of grief until like when I left my mat, it was just like it was all gone. Or I've just been like got on my mat and I was sad, and I was like, or maybe I was fine and then I've gotten sad, right? Because that's one of the things like about you never know. You never know that Forrest Gump line, like life is like a box of chocolates, you
Yeah.
know, you
Well,
never know. And so you never know what you're going to get on that mat. And I try to tell my students that you have to be okay with what you're getting because that's what you need. And so I've been in child's pose and I've wept and I'm like I'm trying to get myself together sometimes. And even as a teacher, like sometimes I'll catch something, I'll catch a vibe, and maybe it's not even mine, maybe it's one of my students. Like I'll be catching and I'll be like, okay, gotta be there for them. Or again, like if I'm in my practice, I'm like, gotta be there for me too. Right. And so you just gotta be there for yourself and you gotta feel it to heal it, right? That trite saying, but it's true.
yeah. I think of it a lot in the terms of the real men do hot yoga. It's a campaign within the hot yoga spot. It's a great t-shirt, great tank top.
Mm-hmm.
But we talk about masculinity. To me, being a being masculine means being able to be in control of your emotions. Yoga teaches you how to notice what you're thinking and feeling. It doesn't necessarily tell you to not feel it, but in my mind, it teaches you to notice it and equips you to better respond to it. I've talked about the idea of if I notice something, if I can sense a feeling of anxiety or frustration or anger, to use the example you brought up, it gives you that kind of that warning, that radar that you need to prepare yourself for emotional sandbags, that tough stuff's coming, or maybe you're in the midst of it and you just have to be patient with yourself and give yourself some grace. That's incredibly masculine to have that skill set.
It's it's a human, yeah, it's a human skill set
It's a
that's
human skill set,
necessary.
feminine, very masculine. It
Absolutely.
it it applies, I think, the divine masculine and feminine.
And I think, we have moved over in the spot where more men are practicing yoga today. And I think, like Aaron Styles like was like one of the OGs like in the area, right? With guys doing it and so for me, like like I said, I introduce it all the time. I'm like, you need to do this. You need to try this, men and women. Like if you're not doing it, you need to do it, or you need something, like whatever your something is. You need an outlet so you can process the world.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I joke with my straight single male friends beyond just typically there being oftentimes many attractive women in a yoga studio for you to potentially vibe with like after class. It's just good for your weightlifting. It's good for your brain. It's good for your whole life.
so yeah, speaking of that, like so I used to lift 3 to 5 days a week before I started practicing yoga. And then I started practicing yoga and because it was taking up some of my time, I couldn't lift as much. But I found that I lift less. I only lift like 1 to 2 days a week now for the past year. And I am pound for pound like stronger than I've ever been in my entire life. And it's because of the yoga. And so, there's something to be said for having a lifelong fitness practice. Like so that I've had. So if you're new into fitness, you do have to lift to build muscle mass. Like that's important. But once you have your muscle mass, like yoga will help you to maintain it. Um and in a better fashion than if you didn't practice yoga because the flexibility or to quote Bikram, it's like stretching is exercise. And so you have to have stretching in your regular fitness routine, unless your body is not going to be at peak performance.
Yeah, I'm all about strengthen and lengthen. For me, I'm obsessed with my current training regimen, which is basically metabolic 6 days a week and then hot yoga spot because I see it. You have that ability to combine the strength with the flexibility. And like for most of the people that I see in the strength training component, usually what they're lacking is the mobility and the flexibility. And you're only going to get so much of that in any great program in that
Without a
type of
doubt.
environment.
Without a doubt, for sure.
Yeah. So when you think about your fitness journey now, like what are some of your ambitions? What are your hopes for where you want to go in the future?
I feel really, and I felt this for a little while now. I feel really content where I am, and I feel like really kind of in. I feel really in tune with the universe that's kind of my life. I love, again, my hot yoga spot family. It's a big one, and we add on these new people into classes all the time, and it's like they, introducing whether it's like sound baths or yoga to people. Like tonight, it was like two new people to yin yoga, right? And introducing to them, and them being like, "Oh yeah, I like that. Oh yeah, I'm gonna come back. What else is there? What else, and so, in like lots of aspects of my life. So, I kind of have this real, this real balance in kind of my being and soul, like where I am. And so it's just about enhancing that. In life, you're a continuous student. So I do still like attend seminars and take classes and read voraciously, just to kind of add on to those wisdoms. Like, you've attended my classes, so I try to bring that into my class. I try to share things that, like, you know that I learned, or things that I would have liked to hear on the mat, when I'm on the mat too.
Yeah, you do a great job of doing that. And with the time we have left, I wanted to ask you, before we walked into the studio, I had shared with you kind of some sad news about my own family and some of the men in my family who have committed suicide. And I think about this a lot within so many people, not just men, but particularly within modern men. There really is a mental health crisis, especially. What's your take on your life journey, your approach to yoga, and just what would your message be to guys who are out there, especially just really struggling through mental health issues right now?
Man, um, yeah, heavy but necessary. I think it applies to everyone, but like, it's a tightrope. It's a tightrope, and I said this in my sociology class, and I said this to someone a couple of days ago. Like the challenge of being a man today is even more of a tightrope, because we still have to be strong, and we're supposed to be sensitive at the same time, and tough, and courageous and sensitive, and you can't be too much of any of them. And so we're kind of like this walking tiptoe tightrope walk, and you're bound to fall, you're bound to fail, and but you have to, gosh, you have to reach out to your social network. And I think even your social network, like everybody that listens to this, and I actually say this on my open mic, I say, reach out to someone you haven't heard from in a while. They might need to hear from you, right? Text someone that you love them, because it might be the only time they hear that during the course of a day, right? So I think it's our responsibility, and I think, like, culturally, we've put that down to the side. I think, as a sociologist, and studying with some of the foremost family scholars, like family problems are, and personal problems, they're left to us, and they should be more of a social and a public problem and issue, but they're not. And so a lot of people shoulder um, a lot of life by themselves, and they don't have to, or especially men think they have to, right? Because I'm the head of my household, and they don't.
Yeah, I think of forget what psychologist it was who talked about that, but like kind of the final evolution of a man coming into manhood is when he loses his father. And I have never felt that more profoundly than in the last year and change since I lost my dad. But the women in my life do such an incredible job of creating community generally for themselves. And it's just something that, again, I'm generalizing, but I just think men really don't do nearly as well compared to, at least around here. There's so many great entrepreneurial groups and community groups that I know of founded, started by women, but yet there just doesn't seem to be much of a lot of that for men. So I feel at least some responsibility to help create that, at least for myself within the fitness communities that I'm a part of.
I think that's that's what you can that's all you can do is you can do your part, and you could reach out to people that you haven't heard from, that you haven't talked to in a little bit, and check in and see how they are,
Be intentional. Yeah.
and make it count, and again, my personal friends and circles, like I do, like I kind of make the rounds and I reach out to folks, or if I have a passing thought or I think of a historic event that includes, and I'm like, oh, I was thinking about you the other day. And it's not like we have to write letters. We can just pick up our phone and we can text them and we can message them, and not to say that you shouldn't write people letters, 'cause I think that's a beautiful thing too. But you do have the ability, and it takes literally a split second to send a text message.
Yeah. You talked about the vision. I think of it often as if I have a thought about somebody, I do my best to act on it immediately because something has put that into my brain. I choose to often think it's a gentle nudge from God to say, "Hey, call that person or text that person."
No
It's
doubt.
so easy now, and we like think, and too often we'll just let it go. But I'm like, no, that's there for a reason. Act on it. Be bold. Act on it.
Absolutely. If you have that thought at 3 in the morning, get out of bed and write it down. If you have that epiphany, get out of bed, write it down. You're not going to remember it when you get up. And so, to quote Rumi, and I put this in one of my books, the whispers at dawn, you got to listen. You got to get up to hear them. And in the silence come the answers. And so that's part of the yoga too, is to bring a little bit of that chatter away so you can hear the important things that are being told to you.
Well, Paul, I can't thank you enough for sitting down with me and talking with me about some of the important things that I know are on both of our hearts on a daily basis. So thank you so
No
much for your
doubt.
time and your wisdom.
Much blessings. Thank you so much for having me. Wish you all peace and love out there.